Bem-vindos ao teste. Ok. Ok. Bem-vindos ao Pavilhão de Portugal. My name is Joana Martins from Azul Foundation. Thank you for joining us here today at our event, Mobilizing Ocean-Based Climate Action, Charting a Way Forward. Thank you for the Pavilion of Portugal to host our event. This event is organized by the Portuguese Ministry for Foreign Affairs and Azul Foundation. First, we will hear from the ocean's point of view. I would now like to invite our keynote speaker, His Excellency José Maria Costa, Portuguese Secretary of State for the Sea, to give opening remarks. Senhor Secretário de Estado, a palavra é sua.
Muito boa tarde a todos. Permitam que faça as primeiras palavras na língua de Camões. Senhor Embaixador, caros membros da administração da Fundação Oceano Azul, dear friend Peter Thompson, Embaixador Especial do Secretário-Geral das Nações Unidas para os Oceanos, administração, públicos, dear friends of the oceans. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to me to join you today to such a relevant subject and with a panel made up of such distinguished experts and leaders in the field of maritime affairs. Portugal is a country with a centuries-old connection to the sea and committed to active and responsible ocean governance, which can only be strengthened through broad cooperation. That's why I'm particularly pleased to be here today to meet important partners in the work to protect our greatest common resource, the ocean. The ocean is the largest storage system for the planetary reservoirs of climate regulation factors such as heat, water and carbon, and represents over 17% of the Earth's surface and contains 97% of all water on the Earth. Its physically and biological processes play a key role in the water cycle, the carbon cycle, and the climate variability. For this reason, we stand here today to advocate for the relevance of the Ocean Climate Nexus. The Ocean Climate Nexus is based on the profound interconnection at the level of the various elements that regulates our planet climate. Thus, the ocean plays a fundamental role in mitigating climate change by serving as a major heat and carbon sink. We believe that the most pressing challenges facing the ocean and the action plan to achieve the SDG 14 by 2030 very clearly laid out in the Lisbon Declaration unanimously adopted at the UNOC 2. UNOC 2 political declaration stated, we recognize that the ocean is fundamental to life on our planet and to our future. The ocean is an important source of the planet's biodiversity and plays a vital role in the climate system and the water cycle. But building on Lisbon, we must do more in terms of galvanizing the ocean agenda. Addressing the triple planetary crisis of the climate change, biodiversity crisis, and the pollution will only be possible if we bear in the mind the central role of the oceans. Synergies with the climate agenda and other processes are therefore fundamental. In this sense, the conclusion of the BBNJ agreement, the adoption of the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and the agreement for the ongoing plastic treaty negotiation were pivotal momentous. And, if nothing else, boosting the credibility of the multilateralism and prove that universal agreements are still reached. Now is the time for the COP and Paris Agreement to make a more ambitious delivery towards a shared understanding of the ocean centrality in climate action and the climate impact. We welcome very much the recent mandate for an annual dialogue on the oceans and the climate change, and we congratulate the two co-facilitators, Chile and Canada, for the relevant work done in so far. But we need to go further. The next step must be the inclusion of concrete proposals concerning ocean-based climate action in the global stock stake. The global stock stake, GST, will identify gaps in the Paris Agreement implementation and provide recommendations for the pathway to 2030. It will also prepare the next round of the nationally determined contribution updates. We have to work for the mainstreaming of the ocean relevance in the GST decision if we really want to see progress. Ocean renewables energies, nature-based solutions, including the protection and restoration of marine ecosystems and green shipping, are concrete and relevant examples that come to mind. We are very much looking forward for an expressive outcome, and in this regard, we would like to recognize the importance of the ongoing work developed by the group of the Friends of the Ocean and Climate. As concerns about climate change increase, the interrelationships between the ocean and climate change must be recognized, understood, and incorporated into the governmental policies, raising awareness of the crucial role of the ocean climate nexus for climate change process, as well as bringing the ocean health on a path to the recovery is a priority. Let me assure you that Portugal will remain an active and a reliable partner on the ocean front. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your remarks, Your Excellency. I will now move to the panel discussion. I would like to welcome on stage our moderator, Whitney Berry, Senior Manager for Climate Policy at the Ocean Conservancy. Please join us. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Joanna, and thank you all for inviting me here today to be a part of this wonderful panel. It's an honor and a privilege to be here moderating such a great panel of ocean experts, leaders, colleagues, and friends. As I introduce the panelists, it would be great if you guys can join me up here on stage. So I'd like to welcome Ambassador Peter Thompson, with the United Nations Secretary General Special Envoy for the Ocean, Tiago Pita Cunha, CEO of Oceano Azul Foundation. And I also will acknowledge that Julio Cordano is unfortunately unable to join us, but we have a wonderful replacement. So José Guedes de Souza, Director of Multilateral Affairs at Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Portugal. And last but not least, Ms. Lorelei Bicor, the Executive Director of Ocean and Climate Platform and the co-focal point of Ocean and Coastal Zones for the Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action. Thank you all for being here today to share your insights and perspectives on the important role of the ocean in the global response to climate change. Our global ocean is fundamental in fighting climate change. It is the pillar of life on Earth. It bears the brunt of climate change impacts, and it provides solutions to combat the climate crisis. It must be front and center in the fight for a resilient, equitable, net zero, and biodiversity positive future. The 1.5 degree target of the Paris Agreement cannot and will not be achieved without a healthy and resilient ocean. And I think we're going to have opening statements from the panel, but we started a little bit late, so I think the beautiful video that we watched already teed it up pretty nicely, so we're going to dive right into some of our panel questions. And with that, first I'd like to ask Ambassador Thompson to set the scene a little bit. And so far we've heard the important role that the ocean must play in combating the climate crisis. So I'm hoping you can speak to how do we make sure the ocean is better integrated into the UNFCCC processes?
Turn the mic, turn it on. I think I'm there. Can you hear me? Okay, good enough. So, I don't want to start without thanking Oceano Azul for putting all this together and for their continuing leadership in the ocean action space, not just in Portugal, but in Europe and globally. We're very, very grateful for all that you do in that regard, and I know you're well represented in this room. and also the Portuguese government. I mean, the leadership you have shown is fantastic. As you know, I'm a huge fan of marine protected areas, and very excited to hear about this Algarve Marine Park. So are they. I was in Selvagens Islands, flew down by helicopter from Madeira to see the Selvagens Marine Protected Area. Fantastic. And I really hope the Azores Marine Protected Area can get into place as soon as possible as well. That will be a globally significant moment when that comes into existence. And we've all agreed to 30 by 30. We've got to get there all around the world. So thank you, Portuguese government. Thank you, Oceano Azul. Look, to answer your question very quickly, you know, the tragic narrative of our time, I encapsulate in coral like this. Anthropogenic greenhouse gases, global warming, warming of ocean, death of coral, unhealthy ocean. Why? Because 25% of marine ecosystems depend on coral, 25 to 30%. How can you have a healthy ocean without coral? And IPCC says on our current track we're going to lose it all or most of it. If you can't have a healthy ocean, how can you have a healthy planet? How can we live? So, you know, it's an existential, tragic narrative that we're currently part of. And we've got to change that. And a big part of the change is here at UNFCCC COPs, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because we've struggled to get in the door here. We're now in the door, but we're not at the top table, really, let's be honest. We're down in the parking lot still. You know, the Nature Pavilion is the last place in this whole huge city that we're in here. And that's where the ocean is, inside there. So that has to change. Nature has to be at the front door. How do we, on the ocean side, accommodate climate more? Yeah, we've got to also be more accommodating. And in Nice, I really hope to see the climate discussion continued there from Bonn, where we now have these annual UNFCCC climate ocean dialogues. Thank you, Canada. Thank you, Chile, for co-facilitating. How can we get more integrated, to answer your question and stop talking? How to answer your question? I would say I'm going to be suggesting this time in Bonn, the meetings are held in July every year, that Chile, Canada, you've done a great job. Their term ends at the end of next year. Let's elevate it to ministerial level. Obviously, one from developing countries, one from developed countries. Because I think at ministerial level we can get more influence when we come here to report to the annual COP. So, you know, hopefully Portugal will step up as one of those ministers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. And that's a wonderful segue. Tiago, I'm hoping you can go next. I would like to turn to building on that previous question. There are opportunities for ocean engagement in international frameworks and conferences. And I'm curious, how can we move towards better integration of the ocean climate nexus, more specifically across those multilateral fora, such as the UN Ocean Conference, we know coming up in 2025, the Convention for Biological Diversity, the BB&J High Seas Treaty, and even the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Plastic Pollution?
Thank you very much for the question, and thank you very much for everyone that is attending. Yeah, I think that we are talking about something that is fundamental, and that is something that I've been working on ocean policies for many years, and I always understand that we have different shelves for the different challenges and the different issues. We have the different UN processes, and I think that a lot of the lack of progress is due to this fragmentation, and so it's a very good question. Of course, in what relates to the oceans, we have seen some very important achievements with New York and the BB&J High Seas Treaty, with Nairobi. Peter Thompson was talking about that this morning, with Montreal and Kunming, of course, and I would never expect that the 30 by 30 would have been there. I was really skeptical about that. So these are all victories, but are all fragmented victories. When it comes to here and to the climate COPs, for a long time, we are trying to have the ocean much. It's very important, of course, what the group of Ocean Climate Friends does, and I recognize the very good work of Ocean Conservancy in doing so. And we are actually here every year also to try to support this job. We are even... happy as well that there are more states this year joining. But the fact is that we will need even to get more unified in our action. I would love to see how the Ocean Climate Friends Group can move from supporting the negotiations and the insertion of ocean language in, I hope that this year in the global stocktake, but also in the final declaration. But I really would think how we can actually work together in between the COPs to create common unified positions, which is something that happened in forests and that happened in other areas, and that should also happen in the oceans. I think that that step is still to go to. And what I would like very much to see as well is that the same way we try to bring the ocean to these climate conferences, that we bring the climate to ocean conferences. And it's the fact that the UN Ocean Conference that we hope is going to be organized in 25 in Nice in France is about SDG 14, and the fact that SDG 14 does not speak about climate, it still speaks about acidification, and we know how the processes are interlinked. So I would like very much that if Nice will be a turning point for ocean action, that heads of state and heads of government in Nice will have a strong message to the members of the COP in Brazil, the serious COP that is going to take place later on that year. That would change probably the status of the oceans within the COPs, and that's why we should work here, but we need to work in the other process simultaneously as well.
Thank you, Tiago. Yeah. Thank you for those wonderful insights, and a great segue looking at my French friend in 2025. We've heard at a high level how to integrate the ocean from within the UNFCCC processes. So now I want to turn to you, Lorelei. Given all of your incredible hard work on the ocean and coastal zones for the Marrakesh Partnership, I feel that you have a unique perspective to share regarding how civil society organizations can support member states to advocate for ocean climate action within the UNFCCC.
Thank you very much, Whitney. Of course, thank you very much for inviting me. We've been on a panel earlier this morning, so there's a lot of echoing what's been said before, but just a few points. According to you, I agree completely, Peter. I think that if we want to take the ocean and climate change dialogue to the next level, it would make complete sense to have it at the ministerial level. We would get the traction needed to report back at COP, and I think that's a fantastic idea. I know that the operationalization of this depends on the COP decision, but we can always use the submarine approach and try and push that elsewhere. But yeah, with regards to the Marrakesh Partnership, so it's a very complicated and long name, Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action on Ocean and Coastal Zones. Welcome to the United Nations. But it's actually a fantastic forum because in other governing bodies at the UNFCCC, we actually have a dedicated space to bring civil society together. So we have, institutions, foundations, scientific bodies, as well as industries, just trying to challenge one another, trying to raise ambition, trying to the latest technology, the craziest ideas, warn as well about, how we can best protect our ocean in our case. But it also goes to, nature, infrastructure, transport, and so on and so forth. So it has been an incredible community. Actually, we have the Nature, Ocean and Land Use Day tomorrow. So I expect to see every single one of you in our events, obviously. But I want to share as well that it's a community that has a positive mindset, in the sense that we have an approach that we call the Blue Ambition Loop, which is a very simple idea that leadership from non-state actors can actually positively influence governments. So we work with a number with Portugal and have been very involved as well, and a number of countries that have been driving change with the UNFCCC negotiations on how can we improve our different ocean-based climate actions. How can we scale them up? And we have developed this year the Ocean Breakthroughs, which basically aim at scaling up ocean-based renewable energy, and Ocean Conservancy has been very leading in that front, decarbonizing the shipping industry, scaling up marine conservation as well with regards to the 30 by 30, but also the protection and restoration of blue carbon ecosystems, as well as aquatic food and coastal tourism. So we have identified all of these solutions that are part of the discussion already. They're already part of the narrative with what countries can include in their national strategies, and see what the counterpart with civil society can do to make sure that it is taken up to the next level, basically. A lot, so just stop me, because otherwise I can go on.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. I can move on there. Thank you, Lorelai. And Jose, I know we're putting you on the spot. Julio Cordano couldn't make it, so I know you have a lot of friends on stage that can help you answer this question if you haven't done it sufficiently, but I'm sure you can. So the question for you, kind of going a little bit more technical now and diving a little bit deeper. The synthesis report from the technical dialogue for the first global stocktake noted that more action is needed now on all fronts by all actors if the long-term goals of the Paris Agreement are to be met. So I'm hoping you can speak a little bit with this discussion we've had, the ocean and climate change dialogue come up and areas to push forward on nationally determined contributions. So I'm hoping you can speak to why it's so important for the ocean to be included in the global stocktake, and how the ocean and climate change dialogue can then advance that role forward.
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation, and it was a last-minute invitation, but I hope I can be at the task to replace Julio Cordano. Of course, Julio Cordano is a key person at the moment. But what comes to my mind, first of all, is that there is no solution for the climate crisis without the ocean. So the first thing that we must realize is that to answer to the long-term objectives of the Paris Agreement, we have to have the ocean at the center stage. And I do believe that we have been doing some progress since COP25. That was the so-called Blue COP. But still, those progress remain relatively shy, and so we need to be more ambitious in what concerns putting the ocean at the center stage at COPs, and of course here the dialogue I think was and is a good start, but I would call it a start, and the idea to have two co-facilitators, the idea to have the thematic teams, that had been answered, but we need more. I think we need to strengthen the dialogue, because we also need to strengthen the discussions in what concerns ocean action, in what concerns ocean solutions here at COPs. And of course, the stage that we are, it is central to include strong ocean language in the global stocktake, because the global stocktake is what is going to guide us in the years. It's what going to guide us until 2030. So it's very important that that in the future NDCs that we have ocean-based action, that in our plans in what concerns adaptation, in whatever long terms that we have ocean-based action and solutions, and of course I'm talking about renewable energies related to the ocean. I'm talking about nature-based solutions. I'm talking about green shipping. We are of course confident, and as Tiago said, the work that the group of friends of Ocean and Climate is doing, I think it's very relevant. The coordination that we are having, it's very strong, and it's a very diverse group of countries. I see my colleague from Ghana, for example, over there, but it goes from Ghana to Fiji, and so it's also important in terms of having this diversity of countries that have a common position. And a last word, just to say that I think recently the ocean agenda gave us a great example in what concerns multilateral consensual positions. We are living difficult times, and it was amazing to see the adoption of the BBNJ treaty. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. And I love your point of how the global stocktake is really going to guide us going forward, because where have we been and how we got here, but it is informing where we're going next. And that's why it's so important that the ocean is included as we have, the next year, the nationally determined contributions will be re-upped. And so including oceans in the global stocktake is vitally important. So I feel so far this discussion has been oriented and maybe a bit technical, and I wish I had time to conclude with what's your favorite ocean animal or something like that to lighten it up, but I was actually inspired by the ocean governance panel that Ambassador Thompson was on this morning, and we were speaking about the need for hope and positivity in this work. And this is off script, but I'm really hoping that you guys can just say a few words maybe of how working in this space for so many years, sometimes progress is slow and you can get beat down, but what are the positives you've seen? What changes have you noticed lately that are inspiring you and giving you hope to keep working on this difficult and crucial action? So, Thompson, thank you.
Wow. Okay, I'm a grandfather. I have to convey hope to my four, and it's a tough one. It is a tough one. But I think, we've referred to this wave of positive ocean action that's been sweeping around the world. I wrote an article for Time magazine week where I talked about the things that Tiago and others mentioned. What happened in Montreal, what's happening in Nairobi, what happened in New York, what's happening in Geneva at the moment on the WTO subsidies. So there is this positive wave of ocean action. If you talked about these things 5 years ago, you would say, no, we never would have got here, we have, because of people in this room and our friends down out in the parking lot at the Ocean Pavilion. They've all been working at this hard for 10 years now, and so we've got this wave going. What Time magazine did was they cut out my second sentence. They thought it was, hyperbole. They didn't like it, but I liked it. I said that it's a wave that hope can ride, not us, that hope can ride that wave with growing confidence. Why? If we, I find that these things snowball. It's like deep sea mining, First they were just Fiji and Samoa, and then all of a sudden, others came in, Portugal and France, and at the Oceano Azul headquarters, President Macron saying there should be a law against seabed mining. But just this call for a moratorium has been snowballing. So this is the way it happens. Once you get momentum, there's now over 24 countries, Germany, UK, France, Brazil, saying that we should have a moratorium. This is what happens when you get momentum. So I have hope that we're going in the right direction now. Where I get despondent and where I speak up angrily and have done on every occasion I've had over the last 10 days of speaking is what the oil and gas industry is trying to do to slow it down, to obfuscate, to pretend that they're leading the transition to renewable energy, when in fact the IEA says that they're only contributing 1% towards the transition towards renewable. That's what annoys me, but I don't think they'll stop us in any sense. They're on the wrong side of history, and that wave that I talked about is the right side of history.
Thank you.
Okay, same question, I guess. I have to say that that's what gives me hope. I've been working on ocean policy since the 90s. In the 90s, everything was about deforestation. Forests were big, and it was the Kyoto Protocol that was on the preparation. And there was a huge ocean fatigue because the UN Ocean Convention on the Law of the Sea took many years to negotiate. People were tired. They couldn't hear about the ocean at that time. And I have to say that in the beginning of this century, there was not much of the ocean until SDG 14 came about. And of course, it was the last SDG to be adopted. It was quite controversial if should we have a goal for the ocean or not. It's still the least funded of all the SDGs. So the ocean was kind of always lagging behind. And I have to say that there were two turning points for me. One was, and Ambassador Peter Thompson has a great responsibility there. It's going to become a historical responsibility because it was the first UN Ocean Conference of 2017, of which is very much also, you were one of the main promoters and organizers. And that's when we understood that there was a fundamental problem with the ocean, especially in terms of the coral reefs, because we had the first reports of the second El Nino and realized that we were losing the coral reefs big time. And if you lose the coral reefs, you lose 30% of the biodiversity of the ocean. So, we are on this extinction of species that's going to be a disaster. And at the same time was also we realized also, I think, with this UNOC, this UN Ocean Conference, of the plastic pollution that was a big issue, the plastic pollution of the ocean, and humans reacted very strongly to that. Public opinions became very concerned with that. I think things changed a lot. I think that Lisbon, 1 year ago, and I have to say, I should say it here now, I would thank very much the Portuguese government and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs also for the great partnership with Oceano Azul Foundation, and of course of your great role with Kenya and Ambassador Peter Thompson as well on organizing the second UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon, because things happen from there as well. We have these multilateral decision-making victories on a world in which the geopoliticals are what they are. So I think that this give us great hopes, and of course our hope now lies in Nice. All our eyes are now turning to Nice. We think that Nice can really be the turning point that was necessary so that we have a roadmap for the second half of this decade on the key ocean issues. One of the key ocean issues is ocean and climate. So I hope that we can approach that in Nice, but another one, of course, is biodiversity, and it's 30 by 30. And another one is not committing mistakes under our watch like start seabed mining. And another one is the pollution, the plastic pollution, but also addressing the source of pollution. So I have great hopes that by mid-decade, we will be even on a better position than we are now.
I hope so too.
Well, in terms of policy hopes, I think we all agree. From a policy nerd perspective as well, I genuinely hope for more synergies and connection across the conventions, because we're talking still, we don't have an overarching ocean, so we're still talking in silos, and we make progress at the high seas, we make progress in the biodiversity fora, we struggle a little bit, but we make progress in the climate fora. How do we connect the dots across all these conventions? So I hope definitely that the UN Ocean Conference in the beautiful country of France, not biased, will take us one step further, 100%. But bringing it to maybe a more personal note, what gives me hope, first of all, is the humility and the strength and the friendship of this ocean community. I don't have the experience. I haven't been here since the 90s working on ocean policy, but I have been fortunate enough to be part of this fantastic group of ocean advocates, ocean leaders and lovers that know how to rely and know how to come together when it's needed. And I used to work on ivory trade on more, biodiversity, terrestrial aspects of things, and I've never seen something like that. I don't know if it's because the ocean is such a wonderful place, but it brings people together, it connects us all like nothing else in the world. So that genuinely brings me hope.
Thank you, Lola. It's beautiful.
Maybe just a few comments from my side to say that for us it's particularly important, the issue of synergies, ocean-related processes, because I think that's a key factor right now, because we have several processes that are running in parallel, but all with the same objective, and so it's very important to create those synergies. It's very important to create synergies between the UNFCCC and UN Ocean Conference, for example. I think it's something that there's still work to be done in that sense, and I hope that that Nice will become an important moment in that regard as well.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you all. You can't go yet. Thank you for your wonderful answers. But now we get to actually open it up to the audience. And if you guys have questions for this wonderful ocean panel of champions, please raise your hand. We'll get a microphone to you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Gabriela Fernandez, and I represent a youth delegation for the ocean. And thank you very much for the great job that you do. It's so inspiring for us. And I'd like to ask as advice for young people like us, how we make the bridge to create a relationship between all the stakeholders that work together in the ocean field. For example, industry and civil society, fishing communities, and so on. Thank you very much.
How to make bridges, the question. I'll answer a little bit more generally. Firstly, I'd just like to say that Secretary General Guterres, when he was in Lisbon for the UN Ocean Conference, apologized to the youth of the world for what our generation is bequeathing them in terms of the state of the world. And he promised to spend, that we would spend the rest of our time setting it right. And part of that promise was to include youth in the executive decisions that are made. And I think that extends to corporations, that logic, and I'll explain the logic, extends to governments, extends to corporations. Everybody needs youth at the decision-making table. Now, when one is talking about youth, I think the important thing is you're talking about suitably qualified youth. It should not just be, whoever is making the loudest noise or, is the best advocate or something. If I go to a fisheries meeting and there's a young person there who's got a master's or a PhD in fisheries, their view is far more valuable than mine because I'm not qualified in fisheries. And the logic comes in where when we make our decision about that fisheries policy that we're facing, that young qualified person is going to have to live with the outcomes of that decision. I will not. I'll be in my grave a long time, but that person will be still around living the effects of our decision, right? So this is why young people have got to be there, because they got to live the solutions. They got to live the decisions that we make. And I just give one example is fisheries, but that's right across the board on ocean things. So that's the logic of making sure that suitably qualified young people are at every decision-making table that matters.
If anyone else wants to take a go, looks like Lorelei, maybe.
First, let me be very clear. I do consider myself young still, so it's not necessarily trying to be patronizing or anything. But I think there are a few things. I agree with you, of course, Peter. But we also need to be able to speak with everyone, and it's great to have convictions and to advocate for them as well. But you've mentioned a number of groups from local fishermen to industries to NGOs. We need to be able to establish this concrete dialogue, and I think that youth in that role are extremely useful because you can convey this hope, as you just said. So how do we work with you to make sure that this dialogue exists? And there are some fantastic organizations doing that here at the UNFCCC and elsewhere. And just to name a few, you have the Sustainable Ocean Alliance, SOA, you're part of them, and UNGO as well. So making sure that you work with your country's delegation as well. And one idea that was put forward, I think, at the UN Ocean Conference was to invite all countries out there to include youth, suitably qualified youth, but young people in their delegation, to show them the reality of the negotiations as well, because it seems very intimidating. And I give a few lectures at university, and sometimes I have a lot of young women as well, telling me, I will never be able to do that. Why? So I think it's also the duty of governments and other organizations that have access to these passes and badges and so on and so forth to bring on the next generation and show the reality of the negotiations as well.
Thank you for your question. Any other questions from the audience for our champions here? That's fine, because I have plenty. You guys are getting grilled again. You weren't saved by the audience. So I'll open this up to the entire panel, but I'm curious, are there any key pieces that we haven't discussed today? What do you think is the missing piece that hasn't been brought up in this conversation of how to include the ocean going forward? Maybe in UNFCCC processes like we've discussed, maybe in the GST, but how do we really push those nationally determined contributions that we know are critical to get marine renewable energy, nature-based solutions, everything that we're hoping to get from this ocean to protect ourselves from ourselves. What hasn't been brought up? Any red flags? I'm curious. Lorelei, what's going on?
Well, clearly, there are many red flags, I think, that we are facing on the process of progressing. One, of course, is greenwashing. Greenwashing is becoming one of the biggest pathologies of our era, and we see it growing every day. But there are others as well. When we are here on a climate COP, we can think of how climate solutions, if also rushed, can also contribute to the demise of the remaining biodiversity. So I think this is an issue that is growing and is going to grow a lot. Certainly is growing in Europe and the United States on how to meet the targets. On a rush, we will have to, in a way, contribute to deforestation on land or to the depletion of marine ecosystems in the sea. And so I think that's something that is very important, and these are two red flags that I would raise here.
Yeah. Thank you, Tiago. I think that we're all in agreement that the precautionary approach and setting guidelines and principles as we move forward to protect what's left in our ocean is incredibly important. Lorelei, you were going to chime in as well.
Thank you. Just maybe two quick points. The first one, with regards to synergies, because we seem to be happy with that topic, is one very concrete way to echo as well all of this and get the ocean in the global stocktake is to reference the global biodiversity framework. We can really make, the connections with the sister convention to the UNFCCC. So that would be a very concrete way for parties, for delegates to get those synergies back in business, basically. And the second point was something that we haven't really touched upon is the notion of inclusivity as well. And it's striking when you go to climate COPs and you see all these different nationalities roaming down the corridors and Sunset Boulevard. I love that it's called Sunset Boulevard because you have all the nationalities going down the road. And we need to make an extra effort as well to be a lot more inclusive. And I attended the Biodiversity COP in Montreal, and we have a lot to learn actually from the CBD here at the UNFCCC. So how do we ensure that more voices, and we say that we have one ocean, but it has many, many, many voices, and how do we bring those voices all the way here? I think is something we still need to work on to better understand the realities and the different stories of those frontliners and guardians of the ocean. I think that's something we can do better on, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can I still say one thing about the global stock taking? José Guedes, you said that this is an incredible opportunity to look at the future because we're going to identify the gaps. I don't think that there is a bigger gap in the Paris Agreement than the ocean gap. I always say this is the original theme, actually, of our current climate governance framework. And so it would be very important that this could be recognized and that we could take advantage of actually delivering the first global stock taking to correct or to at least acknowledge that gap. And so I have great hopes as well that something is going to happen that will surprise us.
I hope so.
Okay, so my final word would be the red flags that worry me are human nature, basically, lassitude, greed, or those on the right who say, you're impinging on our freedoms by what you're trying to do. I'd remind them of Thomas Burke, who said that there is no true freedom without the exercise of moral imperatives. And the moral imperatives in this case are intergenerational justice. And so I think we've got to be strong in what we stand for here, which is intergenerational justice. And emphasize the positive. What did Frank Sinatra sing? Accentuate the positive? Was that Frank? Or somebody said, accentuate the positive. And what is the positive? The positive is that mankind, or humankind, has two great properties. One is our powers of innovation, and the other is our ability to share. And that's what's taken us from caveman days to the space age in a very short time. Innovation, from chipping rocks to our chips that are up there in the spaceships. And our ability to share comes forward mostly during times of crisis. You think of warfare and what we're prepared to do during warfare and sharing with each other. So we're at war with nature now. We're approaching a terrible crisis, the worst humanity's ever faced, and we're going to have to share better. Now, for a lot of cases, that means taxes. You know, and in some countries, like up in Scandinavia, they elect governments if they say they're going to tax more, because people understand that means sharing more benefits around amongst the population. We're going to have to do that much better, not just with communities and countries, but with the world. You know, you can't expect the global South just to, fade away in famines and in droughts and things when the problem has been caused by the North. We have to share better, and I'm very confident we'll do that. Look at the oil and gas industry, $5 trillion worth of profits this year. Tax that properly, take away their subsidies, tax them properly for what remains of their existence, and we'll have a lot of money to share for the stuff that needs doing, which is that transition to renewable energy principally, but also helping out on coral reefs and mangroves and all the good stuff that we need to do to, keep coastal communities. That's my view anyway. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. We are at time, so I'd like everyone to join me in a round of applause for our wonderful panelists for joining us today. And of course, thank you to the audience for being here. In closing, I just want to express my gratitude to you all for caring enough to show up, for you guys for having expertise to share. To Peter's point, sharing is imperative as we move forward in this crisis and solving it. It's clear that the ocean can help us bridge the emissions gap needed to combat the climate crisis, and it must be included in countries' climate strategies, their national adaptation plans, their nationally determined contributions, and across UNFCCC processes. So if we're going to be successful, we need those things to happen. So let the health of the ocean serve as a crucial metric reflecting the success of our combined endeavors and ambition. Thank you all.